this video, I will be teaching the process of synaptic communication. To start off, I will describe how an action potential impulse travels from the presynaptic neuron into the synaptic cleft and into the postsynaptic neuron. To start off, I will explain how an action potential works. The resting potential is at -70 millivolts, and once the threshold is hit, the rising part of the graph is where sodium channels open up, and this is known as depolarization. And then once it passes the peak of the graph, sodium ion channels will close and the potassium ion channels will open up, and potassium will get kicked out of the cell. Then a phase known as hyperpolarization will occur where it divots below the resting potential phase of -70 millivolts in order to balance out the cell back to its equilibrium. In order for a muscle to contract, the action potential must propagate from the axon terminal through the synaptic cleft and into the muscle cell or the postsynaptic neuron. First, the action potential will propagate down towards the L-type voltage-gated calcium ion channels that remain closed, but once the millivoltage changes it, then the gated channel will open up and allow calcium ions to run inside the cell. Then, once the calcium ions are in the synaptic bulb, the vesicles that contain neurotransmitters known as acetylcholine will be exported throughout into the synaptic cleft or the synaptic gap through exocytosis, and this is where the neurotransmitters will find its way to the ionotropic receptor, ligand-gated channel, or the nicotinic cholinergic receptor, where once the neurotransmitter gets in contact with the ionotropic receptor, or the little bubbles on the muscle cell, they will allow an action potential to be restarted, which will eventually go into the T-tubules and allow the electricity to contract the muscle cells. And to sum everything up in this overview, the action potential in the neuron travels from the axon into the axon terminal, and it will then reach the synaptic bulb where neurotransmitters will be released into the synaptic cleft and in the extracellular fluid, and these neurotransmitters known as acetylcholine will reach the ligand-gated ion channels, ionotropic receptor, or the nicotinic cholinergic receptors, and then they will allow an excitatory response for another action potential to restart in the muscle cell, where it will allow the muscle to contract. And that is synaptic communication.